So Amit joined us, and he's running agencies around the world. So I think he gives a really interesting perspective to how to build and sell AI. So we're really glad you're here and look forward to hearing your talk.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, great to be here. So yeah, just for a bit of context, Scott touched on it, but I run a group of agencies, marketing agencies based out of Dubai, Saudi, and in the UK. So funnily enough, I was in Birmingham, England last week as well. So small world, and we're in Fargo this week. So quick show of hands, I guess just to be good for me to know. Who here is in sales, as part of what they do? Okay, good, quite a few of you. That's really helpful, because that's what I'm going to be talking about. I think there's a bit of a challenge. So when it comes to sales, there's a lot of guesswork involved. And for the last 20 years, I've been running agencies. And I think, honestly, probably half of my frustration just comes from sales, right? In terms of not having full kind of transparency or clarity in terms of where a deal is. We're a HubSpot partner as well, so we live inside of a CRM. But, just more often than not, you just don't get the answers that you want. And that's kind of changed from when I was actively selling to now when I'm kind of looking at the numbers. And so what I really wanted to talk about is how AI can really fix a lot of the challenges that we face. And I guess part of it is based on this, right? The human truth. So, for those who are in sales or have been in sales, we've all had that moment, right? We have a great meeting, we're kind of following the sales process, and the prospect is a really good kind of client fit. We've got a good service offering that's gonna do really well for them. So we have great meetings, and based on those great meetings, we put together a really good proposal. We spend a lot of time putting that proposal together, really happy with the outcome, and then we send it, and then silence, right? Like, what happens next? We get ghosted. They're not answering emails anymore. They're not picking up the phone. And you're just trying to figure out, like, what's going on? Like, what have we done wrong? And it just turns into something that was, like, really exciting to something that just becomes highly frustrating. And then on the flip side of this, when we talk about people who are kind of responsible for sales numbers, right? And, if you're running a business or you're managing a P&L, you're fully reliant on the information that salespeople are giving you, right? So in terms of you look at the CRM, you kind of live within that space, and you're watching deals kind of, go through the pipe, and suddenly they get stuck, and you're like, what's going on? And the salesperson's saying, look, I had a really good meeting, lots of, positivity, this will close, I just don't know when it's going to close. They've gone a bit silent, but they're busy. We hear this all the time. And the challenge is, the longer this kind of, longer a deal gets stuck in a pipeline, the less likely it is to close. But in the meantime, if it's a big deal, you're making resourcing decisions, right? You're kind of trying to figure out how you're going to manage this kind of business when it comes in, because the sales guy's really confident, or the salesperson's really confident it's going to happen. Ultimately, the system's broken, right? And that's what we kind of realized a long time ago. And we're just looking for new frameworks all the time. We're like, what can help us? What can help us to sell better, make the whole sales process, so much more efficient. But the more you kind of look at it, it's just more and more challenging, because people's expectations are just increasing, right? Everybody wants personalization, and personalizing at scale isn't easy, or wasn't. AI certainly kind of helps with that now. Proposals, again, people are spending time on proposals based on, I guess, emotional decisions, right? They connected really well with the prospect. They've had really good meetings. This is definitely going to happen, so I'm going to invest more time into that proposal. And then before you know it, hours and hours are spent. More people in the organization have been kind of, working on this. And before you know it, you're 200 hours in. And that's a challenge. And then another problem we have is, I think as salespeople, we're always kind of looking at what's next. So, whether you win a deal or whether you close a deal, we always kind of move on to the next one. And then often the learnings that, are really kind of there that can help us, they get lost, right? They're in our inbox somewhere, or they're in our notes. But ultimately what we're not doing is really kind of using that and then trying to convert that into data that helps us to sell better next time. And so again, these are the kind of challenges we face. And then I spoke about the emotional side of things. I think one of the biggest challenges with making decisions based on emotion and then what you're feeling about a specific deal is you leave behind the ones that you perhaps don't have a great feeling about. And again, it's very subjective, right? You feel as if you've had a good conversation because the person you were speaking to, you connected with them, right? There is an emotional connection. They liked what they heard. But what about that person who was maybe a little bit more reserved? Also liked what they heard, but just perhaps didn't show it in the same way. Do they get the same love and attention when it comes to creating a proposal? And sometimes that doesn't happen. I'd say more often than not, it doesn't happen. So you end up losing big opportunities because we just, we not relying on data and real intelligence. A lot of the time it's just hunch. And I think part of the challenge is this. So, we went from kind of funnel to flywheel, and a flywheel, I kind of look back on it, and I'm like so frustrated with myself, because the flywheel was supposed to be this magical thing, and it's all about, engaging, attracting prospects, and then engaging them, and then delighting them, and it's this magical, frictionless wheel that just keeps turning and gets faster and faster, and you close more business. Sales is full of friction, right? So like, when you start to kind of look at big picture stuff like this, you almost forget about the granularity of a sales process. And for me, that's a real challenge. And so we embraced the flywheel and then quickly discarded it, because we just realized actually sales just doesn't work that way. So that's where we basically decided to create the NEXA AI Lab. So, we felt as if our space, and again, marketing agencies and sort of growth-focused agencies, where our kind of expertise and what we've been doing over the last 20 years is really within that funnel. So from marketing through to sales, and then through to customer service as well. And the more we kept talking to our clients and prospects about AI, the more we realized that, senior C-suite people that we kind of typically engage with just, love the idea of AI, understand the potential impact of it, but just have no idea where to get started. And they're apprehensive as well. They're not kind of worried so much about losing their own jobs and all that kind of stuff. I think that happens kind of lower down in the food chain. But what they're scared about is, going big on something that doesn't work out. And they don't want to lose face. But on the other hand, what they also have is pressure from board members, right? They're going, and whoever they report into is expecting them to kind of be embracing AI, doing something, like really kind of showing how this technology can be leveraged within the organization. And so we looked at it and said, look, how do we make CEOs and other C-suite feel really comfortable about AI? And the only way that we could really make that happen is through a lab, right? Somewhere where they can come in and it's a safe space. Somewhere that they can come, they can kind of experiment, they can ideate, they can, test things, they can perhaps even launch things, and then refine, right? We can launch and we can refine, and we can do this all within this kind of, safe environment. And the lab has been, I think, really, really quite interesting. And as soon as we kind of mentioned this kind of framework, we're now seeing a lot of people very excited about it in terms of, okay, this is something that we can get behind. This is something that we want to be a part of. And actually, more importantly, we need a lab within our own organization, so can we use the same framework and put it in? I think people just want a kind of safety net, a bit of a barrier to deployment. And so we've been working really hard behind the scenes to try and make this happen. And I think there's a few reasons why people like it. The first is it's proprietary. So, whether it's kind of frameworks that we kind of share with a client, or it's a framework that we develop with a client, again, it's within a kind of safe environment. It's a closed environment. The rapid deployment, a few people have kind of touched on that, but we can't wait 3 months, 6 months, or 12 months now to build something and deploy it. It's going to be out of date straight away. It's going to be pointless. So again, with AI, the whole idea behind the lab is actually, let's build something, and let's kind of build version 1 of this within a couple of weeks. And it shouldn't take any longer than that. And again, to our surprise, people are really kind of buying into that. I think the third piece, and a few people have touched on it, is I think everything that we do inside of a lab has to be measurable, right? So if we don't understand what success looks like or what those important metrics are, how do we know if it's really kind of successful? And it gives us a kind of benchmark to work with as well. The fourth piece here is low risk, right? Again, because it's within a closed environment, we are reducing the risk. And I think that's, again, really quite profound for organizations of all sizes, because, again, a lot of CEOs are quite risk averse, right? They've got a lot of people that rely on them. They want to make the right decisions, and they need to kind of really manage that risk process. There's one more part here as well, and one of the conversations we had pretty early on kind of helped define what we did next, and that was when we started talking about AI agents. And we had full buy-in from a CEO and senior management, and they were like, right, absolutely love everything that you're talking about when it comes to AI. And then we started talking about agents, and we lost them. And we just realized at that point that, okay, people kind of do want to invest in AI. They really kind of want to, not just invest money, but invest time and want to kind of understand things. But the second you start speaking an alien language, even though it's just the word agent, they just don't get it. And then that scares them, and then they take a step back, and then, you lose a lot. And so what we realized is that no matter what we do within the space, we've got to productize it. Right? People understand products. They've been buying products for years, right? They've been buying software for years. So we've got to almost speak that same language. So everything that we've been doing in AI, we just put a name on it. And again, within this space, and because it's a lab, we don't have to worry so much about IP, sorry. We just can think about putting a name on it, something that I think one of the other speakers touched on that earlier. Sometimes it's boring, sometimes it's less boring, but the whole idea is that we call it something. And it's very then, easy for a company to relate to it, to refer to it internally, and I think that's been quite interesting. So a lot of text on this slide, but ultimately this is what we decided was going to be kind of a way forward. And sometimes you don't have to change something radically for it to just be better. And we kind of went back to almost like the funnel and said, look, sales is granular. There's a lot of friction in there. How do we just make that whole process much more efficient? And so, we kind of looked at creating all of these different products and giving them names, right? And ultimately, they're really simple. So the first one, top of funnel here, Signal AI, is really looking at research-driven sort of intent data, right? So how do we find the right prospects at the right time with the right need? And using AI to drive that process. The next part, engage and qualify, was all about that first touch, right? So again, in this kind of world that we live in, people have less time. You've got much less time to make a really good first impression. How do you kind of use AI to do that? So, we've launched a couple of different products. Spark AI is basically driven by kind of personalization using kind of mass videos, for example. Convo AI and Caller AI, these are Chipp products. The first one is Chipp products, sorry. So this was based around, the web app, so the chatbot, and also through WhatsApp. So again, where we're from, especially in the Middle East, so much business is done on WhatsApp. And again, so we wanted to just create a phenomenal kind of first impression where, okay, like a company, we see them, we kind of reach out to them, but when they come and try to check us out, how do we really kind of impress them? And that's where these products have come into play. The next one here is a bit of a game changer when it comes to qualifying. So again, when you're trying to work out, okay, which prospect and which opportunity do we kind of invest the most time in, again, we wanted to remove that kind of emotional element out of this. We wanted to use data. And so what we started to do was to feed all of the information that we're seeing kind of above the funnel, above that kind of stage in the funnel at that time, and also then start to link fireflies, right? Again, all of the meetings that we had and bringing transcripts now into the equation. And what we started to see is just real magic in terms of data. So we started to see exactly what reservations were, even if the prospect wasn't explicit about it. We were trying to, something that may have been kind of glossed over a call was suddenly being highlighted. And these are things that can make the difference between, kind of winning and losing a deal. More importantly, we put some metrics around it. So what is the actual probability, based on all the information that we've got, that we're going to win this account if we overcome all of the different objectives and match the needs of what we're looking for? And that was incredibly real, when we started testing it. So based on that, we took emotion out of it, and we started to then allocate resources for proposals and for pitches based on this new data. And that's been really interesting, and we've done this for a client as well. That next stage is a proposal AI. So again, like the amount of time that gets spent, and we see upwards of 200 hours get spent on proposals, which is insane, especially when you don't win it. So how do we kind of reduce that time? So again, using all of that information, feeding that in, and creating a tool that then produces branded slide decks is basically what we've got. So we've got version 1 of that out there as well at the moment, and it's being tested. But that's saving about 60 or 70% of the time it takes to put an average proposal together. And then the final piece is just that continuous learning piece. We want to make sure that now, because we've got all of this data that's living in different systems, we can make use of it. It's not hidden inside of an inbox or in someone's notes. So, so based on this, I thought I'd share just a couple of kind of early wins. And the first is in education. And this was just through WhatsApp. So this company here runs educational camps. So they've got, a target audience of parents, basically the kids that go to the camps are aged between 4 and 14. And what they wanted to do was just basically manage the inflow of parent messages that happen, especially when you're dealing with 4-year-olds. The amount of questions that parents ask, it's insane. And they have thousands of conversations through WhatsApp, through forms being filled on their website, and they wanted to kind of make sure that whole process was streamlined. So what we did was just really simple, and we basically, through Chipp, built a WhatsApp bot, put it on the website, started running campaigns to the WhatsApp rather than to a landing page, because we felt like, look, nobody's just going to go to a landing page and just sign up. They're going to have questions, so let's take them to the place where they can ask questions first. And it's been super interesting in terms of what's happened. So the first 1,000 conversations were insane. So in the past, what they had was a manual WhatsApp, and that manual WhatsApp typically resulted in conversation rates of about 70%. And what that means is somebody would send a WhatsApp and they'd put their phone down, assuming that nobody was going to answer them anytime soon. This obviously changed. And what happened on the back of somebody asking a question and getting a result within 5 seconds is parents were just fully engaged, right? They were in the zone and they started to engage. And, when you start to get a kind of 95, 96% conversation rate, that converts now into business. And so what we did is we also then made sure we put the conversion links directly into the WhatsApp chat. And all of a sudden, there was no human involvement. And within a space of 5 minutes of somebody first seeing these guys, asking questions, they were back straight onto the booking link and actually converting. So it's just been kind of mind-blowing in terms of impact there. And then the second one was based on sentiment AI, which I spoke about. And this really was interesting because this company just had a real challenge. A lot of salespeople, managing that sales pipeline was like incredibly tough. They had some different metrics where they were saying that only about 30% of clients that they had really kind of strong positive sentiment about going into a deal or in the final stages of the deal would close. And again, the amount of time that was going into proposing, into negotiating, and all of those different things, we just said, let's kind of take some of the drama and emotion out of that. Let's focus on data. Let's make it real. And let's really kind of focus on the prospects that really are interested and can deliver. So they've had a real big uptake on that. And they called it the kind of X-ray vision on every deal. And it's taken the pressure off salespeople a little bit as well. So salespeople aren't against it. And I think that's really interesting as well. But at the same time, it's giving them much more kind of clarity on actually what deals are going to close and which ones aren't. But yeah, that's really it. But again, super interesting. Very, very, very happy to have found Chipp. And Scott and the team have just been phenomenal in the many, many requests that I've been throwing at them. So yeah, just great to be here. Thank you.
Let's give it up for Amit.